Hey everyone, in today's episode, I'm going to get into suburbs to avoid in Sydney. It's my home city and it's also probably my favourite city in the world, but as I did with Melbourne, there are areas in Sydney that have performed pretty badly and will perform pretty badly into the future, and areas that you just generally should avoid. It's not as simple as just buying something in Sydney, saying I own in Sydney and thinking it's going to do well. That's generally not the case. It's not generally, it just isn't the case at all. That's what I'll say. So in today's episode, I'll get into a few things similar to Melbourne: fundamentals of good or solid suburbs, characteristics of poor suburbs, and then the suburbs to avoid themselves. Let's get into the fundamentals of good suburbs. Now, this is very similar again to Melbourne. It's pretty much exactly the same, but there's a few points I just want to harp on about a little bit more. So first things first, the first 2 points again is consistently low present supply and low future supply. That is no different to basically anywhere. Supply and demand is probably 80% of the actual pricing in suburbs. But what it is here is, first of all, you want low supply in terms of presently. So what that means is people don't like selling, so they generally like staying there longer. So a long hold period does play a part in that. Low future supply means there's no actual land to build on, so the only thing that people can do is buy and sell existing lots. Excellent long-term capital growth is another. The reason for this is, again, like I'll say in the past, when you're looking to buy, people will say the past does not dictate the future. To a level that is somewhat true, maybe 20% I'd say, but not much. But if you're investing money, you want to be able to quantify and qualify what you're actually buying and what you think it will do in the future, and what a real educated decision would be based on that. So the only way to do that is to go off what has happened in the past and what actually influences the market, which is exactly what we're doing here today. So if it's done very well for 30 plus years, there's an extremely high likelihood it's going to continue to do well in the next 30 plus years. I can almost guarantee you that. So you buy in an area that's done, 8+% capital growth for 100 years. I'm telling you right now, it's probably going to do the same for the next 100. It's just the way it is. Demand from a very wealthy or improving demographic. If there are wealthy people wanting to buy in a suburb, and or people of an improving demographic moving into the suburb, helping the suburb gentrify further, it is going to improve prices because people could afford to bid up prices in a suburb. So that's another thing. Big one in Sydney, distances, CBD and water. Now, Sydney's funny because, alike to Melbourne, you do have pockets that are outside the CBD that are good and close to the water that do well. Probably aside from Point Cook in my previous episode, as I said to people, but Beaumaris is a good example in Melbourne. But in Sydney, you do as well. You have, suburbs in even the Southern Shire that are 25, 30 Ks out from the CBD that do very well as well. You have some in the Northern Beaches that are around 20 Ks that do very well as well. You have some in the St. George region that do pretty well. You have some even in, should I say, the inner western Parramatta region that are by the water as well, that are only about 15, 20 Ks in the CBD that also do well. Some in, should I say, upper middle harbour that actually do pretty well, that aren't in your inner ring. So that's a big part. In Sydney, the distance, particularly to the CBD and especially our major waterways and the beaches, do play a large part. Big one in Sydney, strong lifestyle triangle, the distance it takes to go from school to work to lifestyle areas and back home. A lot of wealthy people in Sydney don't like that being long. In saying that, Sydney is a city that has awful traffic. It is generally a big, feels like a massive city, and it is a massive city. So I know I said 15 to 20 minutes for Melbourne. In Sydney, anything under half an hour, people would consider pretty good. The very wealthy, though, generally still like it to be 15 to 20 minutes. Good public transport does help that, mind you. Excellent existing facility infrastructure. As I said previously, good example of that would be hospitals, specialist healthcare, good shopping centres, good shopping strips, should I say, good access to lifestyle areas for even like, should I say, beaches, waterways, great walking areas, good areas to do fitness, gyms, good schools is another one. All of those sorts of things. Good employment hubs too is a good thing. Transport is a big thing in a lot of areas of Sydney for investment too. That's what I mean by existing facility infrastructure. Again, a lot of new estates won't have this because they have awful existing facility infrastructure. It will take 30 years for them to have the same as an existing suburb. So that's just something to consider. Last two, similar to most other areas in Australia, strong equity value in the suburb and presence of many long-term residents. Generally, if people have owned a house for, let's say, 20 or 30 years, they generally either own it completely outright or with a very low mortgage. If they're still holding on to it, let's say in Sydney, and they bought it for, let's say, 500,000 or 500,000 20 years ago, that mortgage today, and let's say 20 years ago, so be very conservative here, that mortgage today is probably under $150,000, and their place is probably worth 1.5 to 2 million minimum, probably more knowing Sydney, but just to be conservative. So those people really don't have to sell their homes. They could rent a room out and afford their mortgage, to give you an idea. So that's another thing. I mean, strong equity value as well just allows people to do structural renovations on their home, fascia renovations, upgrade their homes, and what happens is the whole suburb's fascia even looks better, and it makes the suburb even more expensive. So that's fundamentals of good suburbs. Let's look at characteristics of poor suburbs. And now I've got an image here to explain the first 2 points. Huge present supply, large future oversupply. So if you've got, especially like a new estate, large present supply, new homes everywhere, and large future oversupply like this image here, with farmland around it just waiting to be subdivided into houses, that is not good. It ruins your supply and demand ratio. What therefore then happens is you might have a ratio, let's say, of 100 buyers to one home, which might look very good. But if you've got the farm next door that's on a few hectares that then gets subdivided and there's a 400 lot subdivision that goes up, what happens to your supply and demand? It just goes completely out the door. So that's the reason you don't buy in these new estate suburbs with a huge present supply and large future oversupply. Poor long-term capital growth. Again, if you've got very poor long-term capital growth here, do not buy there. A good example of that, and I've done this in a previous episode, is Townsville. Townsville's done very well over the last 4 years. However, averages 3 to 5% long-term. It'll go silent for another 10 to 15 years. I'm telling you right now, awful area to invest. You don't buy there long-term. I know I've previously said, and this is true, I do buy in some areas that have done okay recently. When I say okay, it's still like probably 7% capital growth long term. I mean, if it's gentrifying and has a suburb next door that's very wealthy, regional areas that don't have any money can't gentrify because they don't have the necessary income to gentrify with spillover effects. So don't be confused about that. They're probably rejuvenating and not gentrifying. They're two different things. Two things again, large presence of investors and large presence of first-time buyers. Investors offload properties like no tomorrow. If things go wrong, they are happily offloading their home. Long-term residents generally don't do that. That's the last thing they will sell, but investors will because they're not emotionally tied to it. First home buyers generally come with very high LVRs. Generally, they have deposits of 5 to 10%. So LVRs of anywhere from 90 to 95%. That is not good for when the market gets hit because they all have to sell. And what happens is you get a lot of properties listed. Also, they can't maintain their properties as well as someone who has the money to. So it doesn't help either renovations or actually making the suburb look a little bit better either, which pushes prices up. Poor income demographics, no good. If people can't afford the suburb, there's two things here. They can't afford to push the prices up. Firstly, they struggle with mortgages and maintenance as well. But the second thing is mainly that they can't afford to pay higher rent. People can only afford as much as their income actually allows them to. So if you have some people living in a suburb that don't earn enough money for rent at the moment, how are they going to afford a 10% increase? It's as simple as they can't. That's just the truth of it. High crime rates. I will get into this as well. Crime is not good. People don't like living in suburbs for long periods of time with high crime. They feel unsafe. It's as simple as that. Another thing, poor lifestyle triangle. If you're living in an outer suburb that takes you an hour each way to get into work and back and to lifestyle areas and to drop your kids to school, let's say you do that 5 days a week. And then also, let's say you go and Saturday and Sunday go to lifestyle areas. That's 14 hours a week you're wasting out of, your week. That's more than half a day. So it's not a good thing. Wealthy people don't like doing that. I'll tell you straight away. Low equity value in the suburb is another one. So that ties in with first home buyers. I'd say in investors, generally the tenure is very short for them because first home buyers generally buy in suburbs that they want to just get in the market to then upgrade. So it's not a suburb they stay in there long term because it's just an upgraded suburb. So it's not a good thing. Low equity value is terrible because people generally then, because they've got no equity in their home, when things go wrong, they have to sell. Not a good thing. So these are all characteristics of very poor suburbs. I wouldn't buy if they had a number of these characteristics in it. As I said, poor income demographics previously can be an okay thing if it's only a very small pocket of the suburb that has it. Let's say a bit of public housing that's about to be sold off and it's got a very wealthy suburb nearby because it changes the whole suburb, and that's a suburb that can genuinely gentrify. But if it's got a number of these things, it's not a good idea to buy there. So that's something to avoid when you're looking at suburbs, especially in Sydney. Let's get into a few of the suburbs that I recommend people avoiding in Sydney. And the first I'm going to start with is going to ruffle a few feathers, but as I said to everyone, this is unbiased. I do know people won't like this, but what I'm saying is if you have the money to park your money elsewhere and you don't, or especially if it's an investment, you don't have any emotional attachment to a suburb, what you want to do is park your money where is going to do best because it's going to help you in the future. Now, I exclude people that do have to live in these suburbs for uncontrollable reasons, like personal reasons. It's okay. But this is a channel about where to park your money best. And the first suburb I'm going to tell people to avoid is a suburb called Schofields. Now, you can probably include nearby suburbs like Tallawong near there too. And it's just because they're first of all overpriced massively. And second of all, they've got mass future oversupply too. So, I mean, to give you an idea, you can pick up basically Belmore for almost the same price that you can pick up Schofields in Sydney. And that's crazy because you look at just a mass future oversupply going in. This is just an overhead. So you see, first of all, the houses for sale. And there's some even with multiple numbers in that. So I can see one, for example, with 5 in there, a couple actually with 5 in there. And that means there's 5 properties for sale in that just little estate alone. Then you look at here, just those little patches of like sandy looking patches. Those are new homes and new estates going up there as well. So, I mean, that's even more should I say, estates going up. And then where these yellow arrows are pointing to, that's more housing that's actually going in there. So what that means there is you're going to have even more supply. So if you have even, let's say, a pocket that has low supply at the moment, and let's say hypothetically there's 100 buyers and there's 1 home for sale, the ratio is 100 to 1. But what happens, let's say here on Grange Avenue, when someone owns a couple of hectares, then decides to sell it off to a developer and he puts a 400 lot subdivision up? Your supply and demand's out the door, so it's just not good. So please don't buy in these areas if you're genuinely considering your finances. Not good. There's not much infrastructure here either that I consider to be very good either. Sure, you have the metro line that runs out to Tallawong, which is cool, but I mean, other than that, there's not much at all really out here. And I mean, you just avoid it, especially when you're paying like 1.3 million plus. It's pretty bloody expensive. But anyway, that's my first one to avoid. Second one, look, I know I've used the same image as I've done previously here, but this is the same in Sydney as it is Melbourne, and that is CBD apartments is a huge oversupply and a lot of long-term lost sales. Give you a good example. I had a chat with a mortgage broker I know. She was talking about investing in the market. She actually, in 2013, was working for Goldman Sachs, and she was, I'd say, an upper middle manager and on very good income at the time. She bought an apartment in Sydney for $1.3 million. This is in 2013. And got it revalued earlier this year. So this was, I think, February this year, she got it revalued. $1.28 million. Unbelievable. So, I mean, in Sydney, you have this all the time with these CBD apartments. People who actually invested a lot of money long term, should I say, and I say long term, like 10 plus years, they've actually either just broke even or even lost money. They've probably lost money on transaction costs, to be honest. But to give you some comparison of that, she could have bought a house in Maroubra for the same price in 2013, and she'd be probably looking at about $2.8 to $3 million for the same property. Now, this is a very smart lady, mind you, who was earning probably even back that long ago, $350,000 to $400,000 a year in 2013. So it's not only, should I say, people who are, uneducated that don't know. It gets everyone. It gets people who are genuinely clever people, but they look at what's flashy and what's in the news and all that kind of thing. They actually listen to that nonsense. So CBD apartments are just terrible to buy. Don't buy them. They're so oversupplied, and there's even more being built, and they're not. You're not going to make much money out of them. You might make CPI, but I mean, are you really making money if you're only making CPI? I'd say no. So just avoid them in total. Another one, similar to what I was talking about in the past with Schofields, and I'm not having a crack at people again here that live here. I understand a lot of people like it, but it's Austral and Southwest Sydney surrounds. There's huge future land supply here. It's going to continue. I mean, if you go out even towards Warragamba Dam, Silverdale, all those sorts of areas out there, I mean, there's new estates popping up everywhere, new subdivisions. I mean, all you have to do is look at what the zoning's doing. You'll see what's going to happen in the future. This is just Austral alone. Look at all the new estates there. Look at all the new ones being built. And then look at all the land around there. I mean, come on, I've already explained it in Schofield. I don't have to explain it again. Look at all the red arrows. You're going to have a huge future land supply here. It's not going to help prices. Don't get me wrong, yeah, they might go up a little bit, but if you're spending like over $1 million, you might as well park your money. That's going to do a lot better than this. So I would avoid Austral at all costs 100%. Let me get into another one, and I haven't previously mentioned this, but you can actually, I would say for any city or area in Australia, you can avoid this. And the reason being is because it's statistically the worst performing asset in the country. And that is one-bedroom apartments. Just avoid them completely. This is just an article from the Financial Review. So for those who subscribe to it, you can read the whole thing. The apartment trap, why a unit may no longer get you a house. And the reason for that is because of the gap between unit and house prices. And that's just in the sort of short heading there as well, the smaller heading. Or should I say the scribe maybe, or however you want to call it. What's happening is apartments are consistently year after year after year being outpriced by houses all the time. And therefore, what is happening is because of that, you're actually making it harder for you to eventually get into a house for that reason. So buying an apartment is actually awful because it's actually pricing yourself further out of a house. And there's people that pay, even for a one-bedroom apartment in Sydney, I mean literally like $700,000 or $800,000. Now, to give you an idea, that will do, in my estimation, somewhere between long-term, probably 2 to about 5% capital growth. Most of them, now I say 2 to 5 because your ones that are in like Bellevue Hill might do closer to 5, but your average, but those, mind you, are still like $1.1 million or $1 million a line mostly, right? Some are cheaper, but your better ones are that. But even in other suburbs of Sydney, there's people that are paying like $700,000-800,000 for this. Now, you could buy a suburb of Geelong that does like 9% capital growth for that, to give you an idea. And it's right near the CBD and a really nice place to live. So that's the reason you just don't buy these. Just horrific investments anywhere. Don't touch one-bedroom apartments. Never buy them. They are terrible. You don't have to listen to what I'm saying if you don't like what I'm saying. Just look up the stats. Honestly, it's all in plain sight. It is publicly available information. You can fact check me on that. Just don't buy one-bedroom apartments. Look, something that I think people tend to ignore, but they don't know, is in certain suburbs, a lot of apartments are going to be very oversupplied. And the reason for this is because we've got something called the transport-orientated development coming in. So what I've said here is certain suburbs in apartments in the inner west, there's going to be huge oversupply. So for people that don't know the transport-orientated development, it's basically a program that the Labor-Crispin's government has brought out. And what it's going to do is it's going to increase density in areas around certain train stations and the train lines, right? Now, there's also the low to medium housing code rise. Sorry, I think that's what it's called. You can search it up on the internet. That's another thing that actually impacts some of these suburbs as well. But if you line up the inner west and Parramatta, there is a ton of stations and a ton of suburbs that are being listed as a significantly higher density, okay? So what's going to happen here is these apartments, at the moment, it's not all suburbs, but it's most of them. If you look up some of these suburbs, right, what you'll see is that there might be some suburbs that have existing apartments, old red bricks and all that kind of thing. And it mightn't seem too bad, the supply now, but if you look at what's going down and who's buying these actual blocks of land and buying 5 houses in a row, how many apartments they're putting up, there's some that are 200 plus. So the supply of these is just going to be unbelievable in the future. So it's not going to be very good for prices in apartments, in particularly between the inner west and Parramatta. Along a lot of those suburbs, they're going to be very badly affected by this. Just look at transport orientated development in the suburbs it's going to affect, and you'll know where to avoid. So that's just a heads up. Google it, you'll find it straight away. It's very easy to find. Avoid these at all costs. I've mentioned previously in Melbourne high crime rates and how you should avoid suburbs like that. And the suburbs I'm going to tell you to avoid are the Mount Druitt satellite suburbs. So it's not necessarily Mount Druitt itself, although I would never buy there. But Mount Druitt, a lot of the actual town centre of Mount Druitt has cleaned up quite a bit. Don't get me wrong, it's still fairly dodgy, but it's nowhere near as dodgy as it used to be. But when I'm saying your Mount Druitt satellite suburbs, so it's your suburbs that are kind of in the north and northwest pocket of Mount Druitt. So it's like your Bidwell, your Tregear, your Wayland, those sorts of suburbs and the surrounds of those. Now, those are up there with the worst in Sydney. I mean, you just have to search them on Google and you'll see just crime-ridden all over them. A lot of public housing still there. I mean, there's been like gang violence there. You see a lot of drugs on the streets. You just have to search up, like just documentaries on those suburbs and just people struggling there, and you'll see exactly what I mean. It's not good for long-term families, should I say. Don't get me wrong. There's some suburbs that have actually performed quite well, but if you have the option to park your money here, for example, or in Newcastle, the Central Coast, or even some parts of Wollongong or Geelong, I know where I'll be parking my money 100%. Like, I wouldn't be living in areas like this. This is just a Google search of crime in there, and you'll see most of these are all different crime and things going on. So it's not a good thing. It's very bad, and it's just somewhere to avoid. Look, one that a lot of people would be surprised about would be where mortgage stress actually is in Sydney. So this is just Liverpool and surrounds, and it's bad mortgage stress. So it's the postcode of 2170. So look, that's definitely Liverpool. I'm pretty sure it actually includes Cashula and a couple suburbs around it as well. I'm not an absolute expert on postcodes, but I know it's definitely Liverpool and Cashula. But don't get me wrong, the reason for this is a lot of the units in Liverpool, but another reason for this too is because of low income and a lot of bad mortgage stress. So it's somewhere you probably should avoid completely. I would avoid it. So this is just of digital finance analytics here. And you'll see 2170. It's not actually badly positioned in terms of Sydney. And I mean, it is all pretty much built as well, but the mortgage stress is a bad thing to consider. I wouldn't be buying here. You can go and have a look at just on census and about this and just what the incomes are. It's not very good, and that's led to mortgage stress. So avoid the postcode of 2170 100%. It's not an area where people normally think to avoid, but I would 100% avoid it. You're still spending for a house, I mean, like over $1 million here, usually around that kind of mark. So, I mean, it's quite expensive as well. You can buy a good suburb in Newcastle for that. So, and even in Melbourne, you can buy a good suburb in Melbourne for that. So I just avoid it altogether. Final one, it might surprise a few people, Parramatta Apartments. It's full of first home buyers and unknowing investors. Now, I have a lot of people that actually that have thought about buying here, and I even know a few that do actually live out here. It's for community reasons. I used to play cricket with actually a lot of people, particularly from the subcontinent, that like Parramatta and living around there. And don't get me wrong, there's a few suburbs that are very close to there. If you were able to buy a house, they're extremely good to buy in. Very low land supply, and I mean exceptional capital growth because there's so much in such high demand from developers and wealthy investors. That's the reason. But apartments themselves, a lot of Parramatta apartments are 1 or 2 bedrooms. And again, as I said previously, statistically the worst performing asset. So it's no good with that. And I mean, the CBD of Parramatta has just got more and more going up everywhere. So this is what it looks like. I would actually argue the CBD of Parramatta is the same size as the CBD of Brisbane. So for people who aren't from Sydney, if you go to Sydney and you want to fact check me or look at this, just catch a train from, Central to Parramatta. There's express trains all the time. It's one of the main stations in Sydney. and just take a walk around the city centre, over the river to the south side especially, and you'll see all the apartments everywhere. It's crazy how many there are. So just avoid them. A lot of first home buyers, number one, and unknowing investors, particularly internationals, buying these, and they offload them quite a lot, and there's a lot of loss making or break even making sales here, which isn't a good thing. So avoid Parramatta apartments at all costs. Do not buy them at all. Please do not buy them, especially if you're considering to invest or where to park your money for a better return. But look, I hope everyone's enjoyed this episode, and it's been of great value to everyone. I mean, not everyone's going to like that, but I understand it. But again, as I'm saying to everyone, I'm only trying to help people who generally have the choice as to where they park their money. I understand not everyone's going to be in that situation for personal reasons, but if you have the choice to park your money where it's going to do better, that's going to help you in the future, and it's going to help your family's future as well. So that's the whole reason for doing these episodes. But for those people who are looking for a buyer's agent to help them get into the best performing suburbs they can possibly get into, or for someone who's just a bit unsure of what to do, you got a bit of money, you know you can borrow an amount of money, or you're looking in the future, I highly suggest you book me with a 30-minute consult. This is completely free via my website, via www.compoundinvest.com.au/inquire. The link is in the description, and we can just chat about how I can help you, or if you just want a bit of guidance, I'm more than happy to do so as well. I love helping people out in the market. And yeah, the 30-minute free consult, feel free to do it. It's a link. It's just a quick phone call, 30 minutes, and it's been of a lot of value to a lot of people. Gets them in the right mindset, gets them in the right strategy, and they kind of understand actually what they need to do. So really important for that. And for people really serious about getting the top performing assets really in the country, I recommend going to my website and actually signing up just via the options on my website to Premier Properties. That is basically properties with an estimated return of 13% or more. So that is your 30-year capital growth plus your gross rental yield estimated up front. Those are basically available for people who sign up. It'll show you a few details, and you can reach out if you're interested via that. There's quite a few people on the portal, and these do tend to go very quickly, generally turned over within 1 to 2 weeks. And so because people who I do work for know these are good value, so they snap them up very quickly, and they are laughing all the way back to the bank when they go and get revaluations. They generally pull out either tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes more than 100, and they're generally then back in the market again, and they expand their portfolio like no tomorrow. So, I mean, Premier Properties is a great thing for those advanced people generally serious about getting in the market, getting very good returns for properties, and that's available to everyone online. So for people wanting to have a consult with me, so go book me via my website, a free 30-minute consult. For others wanting just to see what's available on the market, sign up to Premier Properties. But again, I thank everyone for watching this. I hope it's been a great value to you all, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.